Hi there. Are you a brain or a story? What is it you think about when you think about you? Is it all these things going on in your head, or is it this story you tell yourself and others about yourself? This identity and all that kind of stuff? Well, it can be both. It should be both. But identities are fluid. They can change over time. And this can be gradual change, or it can be a sort of death and rebirth. When your brain dies, it's actually over. Reincarnation and heaven after death, those are excellent metaphors. They can be very interesting on various philosophical levels, but to take them literally can be quite dangerous. I mean, do believe in them if you want, but don't trust them. Don't actually kill yourself believing that you will end up in paradise or get a better life on earth. That you keep it as long as you reasonably can. But this other you, this identity, this story you tell yourself and others, that one can die and you can be reborn as a new person. You can change yourself. You can't just go and change your brain. You can't change your sexual orientation or whatever by snapping your fingers. In many ways, you are who you are. Your brain can change and does change over time, but these changes are slow and they are limited. However, how you view yourself, how you try to make others view yourself, this whole thing with identity and storytelling, that can change really quickly. How you spend your time can change really quickly. How you look at yourself, that can change really quickly. One thing I was about to mention yesterday was the whole thing with just walking away, changing everything radically. If you're stuck in a destructive relationship of some kind, if you can't change it within the relationship, walk away, become someone else. Let this person you was in the relationship die. If you're having suicidal thoughts, it doesn't actually have to be a bad thing. It depends on how you handle them. Actual suicide is a very bad thing because you lose your brain. That's the by far most valuable thing you ever had and will ever have. You lose your only chance at this life. That is a horrible thing. But to think about suicide can come from a real need for change, and you might fulfill that need in some way that is far less drastic and have much better consequences. Changing your life slowly or radically, remove those things that make you want to die. With a relationship, I don't necessarily mean a romantic relationship or a sexual relationship. It can be your work, your hobby, a social circle, whatever. And it doesn't have to be either or. You can take a break from something and maybe come back later, be a part of it in a new way, or to a lesser extent, or maybe even to a greater extent later on when you landed on your feet. The basic thing here is to avoid getting stuck. avoid getting your life stuck, avoid getting your identity stuck, avoid getting yourself stuck. Of course, everything I just said is very easy to say, and it may be very much harder to do. What we have to do for ourselves, for others, and for society at large is to try to maximize the ability to live. People need to be free as individuals and as mankind as a whole. And part of this is to actually have the choice. When people are starving and are dependent on someone for their survival or healthcare or something like that, they are so much less free. People sometimes talk about the West and such as, quote, the free world, unquote. And I don't think this is really only about democracy in a political sense. It's also about personal freedom, that you're not so dependent on your family or similar. These kinds of social structures is something that need to be available in the entire world for everyone. Yes, I know that this might sound as an unrealistic utopia, but I do think we can get there in a matter of decades rather than centuries. And we need to get there. Everybody deserves a decent chance. Everybody deserves to have the ability to live without killing themselves in a literal sense. We also have the issue of keeping an open mind to avoid bigotry, prejudice, and other facets of categorism. This is so much easier to do if you have an open life, if your life situation isn't constraining you. To have an open mind, you need to have the peace of mind to think, and you need to dare to think, which is so much harder if things are tying you down. I have previously talked about bigotry being a weakness, bigotry being about projecting your self-hatred on others. You can't stand yourself, so you hate others instead to avoid literal suicide. I think if you get away from the things that make you hate yourself, you can stop hating others as well. You can dare to see people, including yourself, in a more nuanced way. You just need to get away from these strict and oversimplified narratives. I'm not saying that you shouldn't use narratives about your life and the world. First of all, that's not possible, and I don't think it's a good idea either, even if it was possible. But you need these narratives to be more open, more flexible, more get room for nuance and having two sides to every story and more stories branching out into a whole mesh. You are the main character in the story of your own life, or at least you should be. Well, not necessarily should be, it depends. But what I'm trying to say here is that your story is not the only story. Every person has his or her own or such own story, and we all interact with each other, and we should all try to be kind to ourselves and to others, and give ourselves and others the space we need to grow and be great people. That's all I have to say for today. Live long and prosper.